The question is, how much of an obstacle is racism after formal segregation has been battled, after racial attitudes changed profoundly in the 1970s? And I'm just old enough to have watched that happen. It gets to the point where, okay, racism does exist, both social and institutional, but how much of an obstacle is it to doing pragmatic things that will make poor Black people less poor and all Black people happier? So, quick example would be that these days you can look at the fact that Black kids tend not to do as well on standardized tests as other kids. It's there. Now, you can look at that and you can say, well, if Black kids don't do as well on the test, that's because of racism. And so we need to eliminate the test because the test is racist.
It's not the test that's racist, it's the system that's racist. First, racism is a derivative of white supremacy. Let's go over it really quickly. In this country, white supremacy is the belief that the white race is superior to other races and therefore white people should dominate and rule over their other races. This is essentially what we are witnessing now, but we'll explore that in a second. White supremacy is a derivative of whiteness. Whiteness is the belief that within the human race, there are categories of races, white race, Black race, etc. Those races were socially designated as a hierarchy by white people. White race on top, Black race on the bottom, and other races in between. We still see that part of the system today when we're asked to pick a race. We are all part of the human race, but whiteness says otherwise. That idea spawned the system of white supremacy, which are the laws, standards, and practices put in place at this country's inception to allow the white people to rule over non-white people through the ownership of assets. There were laws, standards, and practices specifically designed to keep wealth out of the hands of Black people. The institution of slavery being the biggest, but by no means the only one. The legacy of white supremacy are the results of the system of white supremacy, wherein white people have a disproportionate amount of the country's wealth. They are 60% of the population, but own around 86% of the wealth, while Black people are about 13% of the population and own about 4% of the nation's wealth. That was not by accident. With that historical context, the one guy acknowledges that racism exists, but questions how much of an obstacle it really is. He even gives an example of standardized testing. I'm not going to say this guy is being disingenuous, but he must know that the school systems are directly apportioned to the amount of wealth the people in that town, city, or county has. So let's put this all together. There's a generational system designed to keep wealth out of the hands of Black people. And when I say wealth, I'm talking about the ownership of assets. The system made them property, made them unable to own property, discriminated against them from obtaining wealth-creating loans, discriminated against them from accessing credit to purchase wealth-creating homes, etc. They look at the school system and they must know that students from wealthy areas perform better than students from non-wealthy or poorer areas, especially with standardized testing. And he wonders how big of an obstacle racism really is. The test isn't racist. The test scores are a byproduct of the system that was created. The test reveals the racism, but they ignore the system, even in light of the evidence. This reminds me of an old Al Bundy quote when his wife asked him if she looked fat in the dress she was wearing. He responded, "It's not the dress that makes you look fat. It's the fat that makes you look fat."